Israel is flagrantly violating Syrian sovereignty, conducting airstrikes, including on the presidential palace, arbitrarily proclaiming the south of Syria a demilitarized zone, and occupying a significant portion of the country's territory. Thank you, Mr. President. We're grateful to the SG Special Envoy on Syria, Geir Pedersen, and the OCHA Director of Operations, Ms. Aide for their extensive reports about the situation in the Syrian Arab Republic. They paint a clear picture. Syria continues to face a number of rather acute challenges. Effectively overcoming these challenges is what Syria's future hinges on. Russia hopes that the brotherly people of Syria will swiftly overcome this protracted period of instability and internal crisis, going down the road of national accord and sustained economic growth. Yet all Syrians must feel protected in their own country. To this end, the Damascus leadership should undertake all necessary measures to ensure the cohesion of the Syrian people and respect for the rights of all Syria's citizens, irrespective of their ethnicity or religion. Unfortunately, recently we had an opportunity to see that an inclusive Syria remains a far-off prospect. During clashes in Syria between security forces and local armed groups, again, just like a few months ago in Latakia and Tartus, hundreds if not thousands of people perished. UN human rights defenders are pointing to reliable reports about extrajudicial executions, abductions, the destruction of private property, and looting. As a result, the local populace is intimidated. They are highly vulnerable. According to the UN, essential infrastructure has been damaged. The number of IDPs is rising rapidly. According to various reports, 145,000 people were forced to flee their homes. These people need urgent assistance. We call on OCHA to place the highest priority on the vulnerability of religious and ethno-confessional minorities, as well as to intensify its efforts to broaden the humanitarian presence in unstable and affected areas. For the time being, UN system agencies' access to these areas is extremely limited. We learnt that the delivery of humanitarian assistance, well, to achieve that, the UN has been compelled to use the Syrian Red Crescent. Under such conditions, we insistently call on OCHA to work towards sustained and secure access to the vulnerable. Against this backdrop, we believe there is rationale for the initiative to conduct an interagency UN visit, the main objective of which would be to issue an objective assessment of the humanitarian situation on the ground and to determine priority needs of the people affected. We believe it's necessary to intensify cooperation with the Syrian authorities on this issue. We're counting on them taking a constructive stance which would allow us to organize such a mission as swiftly as possible. We underscore that it's unacceptable, this violence against civilians. We hope that the ceasefire concluded on the 16th of July will help to dial down tensions as well as to stabilize this part of Syria. We believe that there's no alternative to dialogue and the strengthening of national reconciliation, as well as respect for the rights of all representatives and communities within Syria's multi-confessional society. We note the Syrian authorities' decision to establish a fact-finding commission to figure out what happened. We believe that the investigation of crimes should be independent, impartial, and transparent, in accordance with international legal standards. At the same time, we call on the UN, including Mr. Pedersen, to keep the spotlight on this issue and to issue objective assessments of what's going on. Ensuring justice and accountability on such issues is of key significance for rebuilding trust, protecting civilians, and preventing a further escalation of violence. Against this backdrop, we noted that fact-finding commission published its findings. It was established in the aftermath of many instances of violence on Syria's western coast. The findings note massacres against Alawites, the sowing of interconfessional hatred, and it's been noted that 1,426 people died. Against the backdrop of the presidential statement in March, which decisively condemned mass killings in Latakia and Tartus, we continue to count on the Security Council receiving from the Syrian authorities detailed information about the investigation. We also hope that the Syrian authorities will closely cooperate with the Special Envoy. We believe that holding all perpetrators to account, irrespective of their status or their job position, will help to bridge the gulf of mistrust and fear as a result of this flare-up of violence. We need additional efforts to resolve the issue of foreign terrorist fighters among the ranks of Syria's army. Many of them openly sympathize with terrorist groups. The level of the terrorist threat in Syria also remains high. The 22nd of June terrorist attack on the Antiochian Orthodox Church of the Prophet Elias in the east of Damascus, which claimed the lives of over 20 people and resulted in tens of Syrians being injured, deserves our decisive condemnation. We call on the Syrian authorities to intensify their efforts to combat the terrorist threat and to ensure proper protection of Orthodox holy sites, as well as to ensure all those responsible are held to account. Another pertinent issue is the reintegration of Kurds into a united Syrian state and the implementation of the agreements between the central authorities and the Trans-Euphrates. We note with concern tensions in the northeast, as well as reports of isolated clashes between the Syrian security forces and Syrian democratic forces. We stand convinced that mutual distrust can be overcome by effective steps taken by Damascus to resolve the crisis in the south, as well as to ensure justice is done when there are instances of attacks on Alawites and Christians. We condemn Israel's actions, which is doing as it sees fit in Syria. Regardless of seemingly well-intentioned pretext West Jerusalem is using, the fact remains Israel is flagrantly violating Syrian sovereignty, conducting airstrikes, including on the presidential palace, arbitrarily proclaiming the south of Syria a demilitarized zone, and occupying a significant portion of the country's territory. We reaffirm our unswerving position in favor of the need for the respect for Syria's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity. Against this backdrop, we're following very closely incipient Syrian-Israeli contacts on security, including the talks in Paris on the 25th of July. We stand convinced that dialogue is the only way forward towards Israel properly securing its own security with due regard for the lawful interests of the Syrians, especially given the fact that Damascus has sent many signals about its willingness to establish peaceful relations with all of its neighbors without exception. President, as we heard today, the humanitarian situation in Syria remains very concerning. The country is facing the growing needs of its people against the backdrop of instability and the destructive repercussions of extreme weather events. Inclement weather has created additional risks against the backdrop of existing issues in the agrarian sector. The drought and the destroyed irrigation systems are threatening 75% of the wheat harvest, which can significantly undermine food security and the supply of basic foodstuffs to millions of Syrians. We're equally disquieted by the forest fires in Latakia province, as a result of which over 15,000 hectares of forest and agricultural land has been destroyed. Thousands of people suffered. We're particularly outraged by reports of arson. Terrorist groups have supposedly claimed responsibility for these acts. Such ill-intentioned acts are absolutely unacceptable. We've consistently supported the UN's efforts to provide humanitarian assistance to the Syrian people. Under current conditions, it's important to ensure impartial, sustained, and coordinated support to those in the greatest needs. We expect the Syrian authorities to provide comprehensive support for humanitarian operations and that they will be guided by the imperative of protecting civilians. President, by way of conclusion, I'd like to underscore that everything that's happening in Syria proves the fact that going back to the political process is the only game in town, a process that's Syrian-led and implemented by all Syrians without exception with the UN support. The parameters of this process are enshrined in the UN Security Council Resolution 2254. As part of this process, the rights of all of Syria's citizens must be guaranteed. We fully support the efforts of the Secretary General's Special Envoy on this front. The Russian Federation is interested in fixing the situation in the country in the interests of ensuring its sovereignty, independence, and unity, as well as its territorial integrity. We intend to strengthen links with Syria, to which we have been historically bound by friendly relations. I thank you.